Yes, the title of this video is correct. Apparently there is a lawsuit against Apple currently with relation to the M1 MacBooks and a potential screen defect. And in this video, we're gonna break it down and I'm gonna tell you if you need to be worried or not. Now, I have made a video on this topic a couple of weeks ago. I definitely do recommend watching that as well if you have the time, but if you can't be bothered, here is a quick breakdown to get you up to speed. Now, I wanted to preface this video just by saying that I'm not an Apple apologist and I'm not trying to defend Apple so that they'll sponsor my channel. I've made plenty of videos criticizing Apple in the past. Now, a big part of why this is possible is because we have sponsors like Bellroy who sponsor videos here and there, and that allows us to actually go out and buy all of these M1 Macs, in this case 4 of them, for you guys so we can do testing and share our results with you. And this allows us to remain impartial and unbiased. So big thanks to Bellroy for sponsoring this video, but more on that a little bit later. Now, moving along into the video, for defect rumors like this, we have to look at them rationally and we also have to use existing data. Does Apple have a history of having devices with defects and not admitting to it up until the last minute? Yes, they do. But that doesn't automatically mean every time a rumor pops up that it's legitimate and you should be worried. Now, if this does end up being an actual issue, I will make a follow-up video telling you guys all of my findings and what's been going on. But for now, let's look at the existing facts and data and let's get this investigation underway. So you know that lawsuit I mentioned in my previous video on this topic? Well, now it's apparently made its way into court properly. But before we examine the lawsuit, let's talk about a few points first of all. The first one being a guy called Louis Rossmann. Now, if you're not familiar with Louis Rossmann, he's essentially the GOAT for MacBook repairs. He's been repairing MacBooks for close to 15 years and he has seen everything. Now, he also unashamedly hates Apple, so he's the last person on earth who would want to defend them. Yet, in one of his videos on this lawsuit topic, one explanation he mentioned is that very often people will accidentally damage their laptop and then act like they didn't to try and get a free repair. And this is especially relevant if they don't really take the greatest care of their devices. Now, I'm not trying to say that all of these reportedly defective screens are due to accidental damage, but it does help to explain and set up some points I'm gonna make later on in the video. Now, back to Louis Rossmann, he also went into detail on previous Apple defects, of which there certainly have been many, and described some of them. For example, peeling glue on a previous gen MacBook display, or a weak point in the hinge that caused some screen issues in older models of MacBook. These are all verified, visually obvious defects. But as of the date of that video, he hadn't come across anything that was obviously defective on the M1 MacBooks. And in his opinion, if it did turn out to be a defect, right now there's just not enough data to tell for sure. But let's come back to that a little bit later on. Secondly, iFixit, which is a pretty well-respected company that does teardowns of devices, and they also post repair guides. They did a teardown of the M1 MacBook and they had this to say, and I quote, "Internally, the M1 MacBooks could hardly be any more similar to their predecessors. The new 13-inch MacBook Pro looks so familiar inside, we had to double check that we didn't accidentally purchase the old model. With relation to the Air, apart from the new board and cooler, the rest of the Air remains all but identical to its predecessor." Now, this doesn't tell you a whole lot, but what we can deduce from this is that this particular chassis on the M1 MacBook Air and MacBook Pro is essentially exactly the same as the previous generation of MacBooks, which did not have any defects or issues with the screen. Thirdly, I've had a couple of people comment saying that because this Apple support forum discussion has so many users reporting the same thing, it must be an issue. Well, again, let's look at the facts. 864 people have clicked "I have this issue too," which is a fair amount of people. But even if every single one of those people suffered from an actual defect, let's do some maths. 864 reported cases out of, for example, 1 million M1 MacBook units sold. That is a 0.08% chance that your M1 MacBook may have a screen defect issue or the screen will just randomly crack. That's well within manufacturing tolerances for things like glass or screens, and the truth is that a small percentage of devices, regardless of manufacturer, will just come out of the factory with faults. It's just unavoidable. The reality is that way more than just 1 million M1 MacBook units have been sold, so that percentage I mentioned before, in reality is actually a lot lower. Now, let's quickly mention something as well before we get into the lawsuit, and there's something I like to call the Apple controversy effect. People just really love to hate Apple, and don't get me wrong, a lot of the times the hate is deserved. Apple does some pretty stupid stuff, but things like this tend to pick up traction due to hype, and many times it turns out there was no issue at all. Now, if you want to protect your MacBook from drops or scratches and that kind of thing, you can consider, of course, getting a case. And this is where the sponsor for this video comes in, Bellroy, with their MacBook accessories and also other accessories for your Apple devices. Bellroy is an Australian-based company focused on creating functional, sustainable, and quality products. They create and sell a bunch of cool things such as laptop sleeves, tech organization kits, wallets, bags, and more. Check out some of our favorites: a tech kit that helps you organize your tech accessories, a high-quality, water-resistant MacBook or iPad sleeve with microfiber lining, and a desk pouch to keep all your frequently used accessories in one convenient place. Bellroy is a certified B Corp with a big focus on the environment, using sustainable materials and supporting charities. Use the link in the description down below to get 10% off your next purchase. Okay, so let's get into the actual lawsuit. Yes, guys, I did read through the entire thing so that you don't have to. There are actually 2 class action lawsuits for the same topic, but this particular one here is better written, in my opinion, so we're just gonna go with this one. They're both almost identical. Okay, so here is the lawsuit. I'll try and link it down below if you want to peruse it yourself. I've made a couple of notes here, so let's just skip straight to the highlighted sections. So here we have the parties involved. So obviously the way a class action lawsuit works is a law firm has to go out and find affected parties, so people that have had this issue. And we have one here, which is the first plaintiff. And she states that on or around early June 2021, cracks began to form on the laptop's screen and was soon accompanied by black bars streaking across the display. The plaintiff had not used the laptop in any manner different from her prior daily routine when the screen defect first manifested. Now guys, I just have to comment on this quickly. I really do feel sorry for a lot of these people because very often what will happen is it will actually be a defect, but it's gonna be something like a 1 in 500,000 or 1 in a million manufacturing defect from not even Apple's workshop, from the actual supplier they get their parts from. The reality is, things will just break. If you get a car, something might break down. If you get a phone, the glass might crack or the antenna might stop working. It does happen. And the tricky part is sometimes getting the manufacturer or the reseller to actually cover that under warranty. Because at the end of the day, some people really do just get screwed. So if we continue down to the next relevant section that I wanted to talk about, for example, many class laptop owners have spoken out about the screen defect on the popular message board Reddit. In one thread entitled, "Opened a new M1 13-inch MacBook, LCD is cracked, what the hell happened?" And guys, this is my biggest problem about this class action lawsuit. The entire lawsuit is based off social media posts from oftentimes completely anonymous users on anonymous forums such as Reddit. And one of the main issues that I see with this particular case is that if you're coming up against a multi-billion-dollar company like Apple, and you're just gonna screenshot a few social media posts and have that as the basis of your class action, it's probably not gonna hold up very well in court. So for example, if we scroll down a little bit further here, we can see some of the comments. Again, they're almost all completely anonymous. There are very little photos here, almost none. I think only about 5 to 10% of people have actually uploaded photos accompanying their posts. So if you can imagine sitting in a courtroom and someone reading out the username Unabled Grape or Dolce Espress or Lil AC Porch as evidence against a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it just doesn't really seem very legitimate. And I think that this particular class action is really going to struggle in a court environment. Now, you might be asking me, Liam, where's all the other evidence? Surely there's mountains, right? Unfortunately not. It's, again, literally just some social media posts from anonymous users, no photos. There's no expert opinion from a repairer or ex-Apple employee. There's no clearly identified fault, for example, like the hinge fault Louis Rossmann pointed out in his video. There's no mention of if these devices were produced on a certain date or possibly came from a defective batch. You can find the manufacturing date of a device fairly easily using third-party software and the serial number. This lawsuit just says, yes, there is a defect, without really providing any reason or evidence to prove it. Now, I thought I'd give you really quick my personal opinion on class action lawsuits like this. And in my opinion, the aim of a lot of these class action lawsuits is for a law firm or a lawyer, for example, to gather as many plaintiffs as possible. Plaintiffs in this case being people who have experienced this issue, get them together, get a minimum amount, and then put it into court. Because in the unlikely scenario that, wow, it does actually turn out to be a defect, they've already got a lawsuit, they've got plaintiffs, they've entered it in the court, and now they could very well make millions of dollars from a lawsuit such as this. If you look at the statistics for class action lawsuits, very, very many of them fail and go completely nowhere. But if you can make one of them stick, it could end up being a very, very good payday. Now, one thing I'll quickly mention is a little personal anecdote from me. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, I've got several M1 MacBooks. I've put them through a lot, rendering in Australian sun, dropping off a couch, closing the screen multiple times with a finger or sheet between the lid and keyboard, etc. And at night, I'll generally throw it on the bed or put it on the ground and charge it. I really don't take as good a care as I should of my M1 MacBook, but I haven't had any issues so far. And this is across all 4 of the MacBooks we've had here for testing and video purposes. Now, on my previous video on this topic, out of about 50 to 60,000 views, I had only about 10 people comment saying that they had experienced a screen on their M1 MacBook randomly cracking. Now, moving on to what to do if your M1 MacBook screen cracks randomly. You should take multiple photos right away. You should also take note of the events leading up to the crack. So where was it in your house? Was it sitting on a table, on a bed? Were you using it? Was it rendering a video, for example? And then take it straight to Apple. If they refuse to repair it under warranty, push it further and try to escalate it if you can. If they refuse to repair it under warranty, be loud about it. Go onto Reddit, go onto YouTube, make Reddit posts with tons of evidence, lots of photos, make some videos, upload them to YouTube, send them to people like me so we can collate them all and get it out there to the public. Because if enough people do this instead of a few anonymous posts simply saying, yeah, my screen cracked too, we can actually get somewhere with this. So those are all the points I wanted to cover in this video. I just wanted to stress as well that this very well could turn out to be an issue, but at the moment, there's just not enough data. And the MacBooks have been out for almost a year at this point. So you've had millions and millions of users using and abusing their machines. And if we're only seeing a couple of hundred people with this particular defect online, I don't really think it's going to turn out to be an issue. But again, if it does, I won't hesitate to make an update video and show all of you guys about it.